A warm welcome to you from across the globe. Welcome to the Virtual Island Summit and to this panel on green technopreneurship and innovation for island challenges. Now, we know that we have lots of people joining us from across the different parts of the globe, and so we will now invite James to release the poll so that we can get a sense of where you're joining us from. Okay, so you should have submitted your responses. And James, do we have any feedback to share? Yes, so today, or at least for this session, we have most of the participants coming from the Caribbean, and we also have some participants coming from North America. Actually, the figures are not too far apart. And we also have some colleagues from Europe and from East Asia. So welcome. James, perhaps you have another poll that you can share with our colleagues. So it reads, which sector best describes you? And you have a number of choices to select from. And we see we have an interesting situation today. The other category is actually leading. Second in place, we have the private sector, and we have some colleagues from academia. Again, a warm welcome to everyone. If it's morning or afternoon in your part of the world, or even evening, we are so happy that you could have joined us today on this very exciting panel where we hope to discuss some of the pertinent issues affecting islands today. So this panel is actually organized by the OECS Commission, who is also the lead sponsor for the Virtual Island Summit. My name is Judith Ephraim, and I am the Sustainable Energy Program Coordinator at the OECS Commission, and I am your moderator for this session. Just by way of introduction, the OECS Commission, or the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, rather, is an international intergovernmental organization dedicated to economic harmonization and integration, protection of human and legal rights, and the encouragement of good governance amongst independent and non-independent countries in the Eastern Caribbean. And just so you know, we have 11 member states in the OECS. So the Commission is really the administrative body of the organization, and a significant part of our work of the Commission is to promote and foster a common approach to trade, health, education, and the environment. As well as this, we seek to promote development in critical sectors such as agriculture, tourism, and energy. So this brings us to the topic at hand: green technopreneurship and innovation for island challenges. Coming from the islands, we know that we face some unique developmental challenges with respect to economic growth, unemployment, appropriate technology transfer, energy access and security, and environmental integrity. Now, the small size, remote locations, and the inability to take advantage of the benefits of economies of scale can affect the ability of islands to address these challenges. Nevertheless, these circumstances force islands to develop innovative and adaptable solutions which create means of revenue generation that preserve their delicate natural ecosystems. The panel today explores some exciting case studies of green technopreneurship and innovation in the Caribbean that hold global lessons. It addresses opportunities in energy, water, marine ecosystems, and agriculture. The panel identifies some of the enabling factors that can be addressed regionally to support ongoing green innovation for bolstering emerging markets and trades on islands and between islands. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to present to you this esteemed panel featuring Mr. McHale Andrew, an independent consultant and part-time country advisor for the Caribbean Business Angels Network, which is coordinated by the EU-funded Caribbean Export Development Agency. Mr. Callis Noel, a self-taught green technopreneur who has developed a mobile solar-powered brine-managed desalinator, which is now pending patenting. Mr. Johanan Dujon, who is also a green technopreneur. He is the CEO of Algas Organics, the Caribbean's first indigenous biotechnology manufacturing company. And lastly, but by no means least, Dr. Gary Jackson, who is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. And he has an intriguing career which has seen him work in various capacities in the field of renewable energy. Gentlemen, welcome. At this point, I just want to remind us that we will have a question and answer section, and you should use that segment or this tool to put in your questions. And at the end of the session, we will get the opportunity to discuss some of the issues that you have raised. We will turn our attention now to Mr. McHale Andrew, and I will allow him to introduce himself and to share a little bit. Mr. Andrew. Mr. Andrew, if you were speaking, could you please unmute your mic?
Yes, I had to unmute everything. Thank you, Julie, and welcome to all participants, panelists, as well as to all the international and regional participants who have joined us. This is a very, I believe, timely session, because we have seen in the region, as in other parts of the world, a very encouraging development where a number of younger entrepreneurs are heading out into the world of entrepreneurship with two main focuses as far as product is concerned. And both of them are based on a platform of innovation. But in one instance, we have new technologies being developed, sometimes adapted to the peculiarities and the conditions in our region, and in some instances in the specific country within the region. We also have a number of green or green innovative entrepreneurs, and we have two of them in Carlos and Joanne, and both of whom I have worked with within the Angels group. And it is, you know, very, very encouraging, I must say, to see that focus, not just on entrepreneurship, because it's very important to understand that unless you are a command economy or communist country, the private sector is really the engine of growth. Many governments talk about job creation and so on, and I like to, as a development economist, reduce it to very specifics and say, governments do not create jobs. Jobs are created by private sector activity. To the extent that the private sector thrives, they pay taxes to the government, they pay user charges to the government, and that then allows the government to create jobs in the public sector. But on its own, without a private sector to pay for goods and services provided by the government, or to provide the wherewithal through taxes to government, there would be no job creation. So one must understand the importance of private sector activity. We are in a new era where we have the challenges of climate change, but we also have the challenges of economic development. And we have the phenomenon, which has been with us for about 20 years now, of economic growth without the attendant creation of jobs. And there are lots of reasons for that, and we wouldn't get into it. But where you have economic growth without job creation, there are two things happening. First of all, there's innovation that uses less and less human capital and more technology and financial capital. And that obviates the need for labor as we know it, traditional labor. Then there's also the phenomenon of economic growth being measured in what I call jaundice terms, where you have one very small segment of the society earning literally obscene amounts of income, of money through profit, not filtering that income through the economy. In most instances, placing it in foreign banks, internationally. And that obviously gives a false sense of achievement. The traditional GDP is not the best way to measure an economy's development. There has to be the issue of inclusiveness. There has to be the issue of sustainable and sustaining livelihoods. There has to be the issue of meeting the triple bottom line of economic efficiency, which includes business, vibrancy, social equity, and of course, environmental sustainability. And let me just end by saying this. In the region, our three most abundant attributes are perhaps the three most neglected. The first is the marine environment. In almost every island economy, there is a 70-30 ratio, and sometimes larger, of water, ocean to land. So that is a resource that exists but has not been tapped into as efficiently as it should. The second resource that has been fairly neglected is our human resources, our natural talent, which I see in our young entrepreneurs almost on a daily basis. That is the future. That is where we have to place our focus if we want to realize the true potential of development that our small countries have. And that human resource obviously has to be tapped into through entrepreneurship development, through supporting infrastructures and so on. And the final resource that again has been fairly neglected is our natural attributes, our natural environment, our physical environment, including our marine space, but mainly our terrestrial environment that has been taken for granted. We now have a situation where we have entered the era of the Anthropocene, where it is man's activities that has caused an imbalance in the physical environment. And the only way we can redress that imbalance is through a change in man's activities. And I think that is where the three things, if you put them together, it is the new economic paradigm that has to be answered with a new way of looking at economic development and a new way of engaging young people, engaging the maritime environment, engaging the terrestrial environment, and focusing on the triple bottom line of people, prosperity, and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. And there has been quite a bit of discussion of late regarding the green economy, the blue economy, as you hinted, green growth. And these areas have really become areas that islands have tried to focus on. But given your experience, having worked in the field of investment, I think you are familiar with some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges that exist, especially within small islands when it comes to new startups and new businesses. I know that you've also done some work for the OECS Commission most recently in terms of a diagnostic study looking at the green economy. You have highlighted the need for the private sector to become involved, and that is very critical. But I wanted to ask you whether there were any key factors to your mind that are really important for islands in creating that enabling environment so that we could have the new businesses that are emerging become sustainable and profitable.
Of course, there are many factors, but I want to highlight three of them because I believe in my own view, they are the most important. The first one is leadership. It is being able to embrace the realities of the problems and issues that confront us, which I have described earlier, looking at the three key resources. And being able to use both traditional and innovative measures to address these. And that requires leadership. It is not enough just to understand, but you must have the vision and implement that vision and be able to mobilize resources, including people around you, to get this to work. That is one of the biggest challenges, I believe, in small countries. That leadership that I see perhaps only to a certain extent in Barbados, with the new government in Barbados and their total embrace, of a sustainable approach to development. It takes a while, but you have to have that leadership. The second issue is one of finance. When we think of finance, everyone thinks of debt financing. Everyone thinks of traditional commercial banks. And I say, yes, the commercial banks have the resources, but there is a concept called financial intermediation, which means that before money can go from where it is to where needs it, there are certain forces at play that can cause it to get there without being sent in directly. So in a layman's term, let me just see, commercial banks are by definition not structured to do startup financing. And so for a startup, when you go to a commercial bank and they ask you for a business plan, that alone betrays a lack of understanding of commercial banks, of startups. Because a business plan for someone who has no traction, who just has an idea, is moot. It's like a telephone number. What you need to do is to understand that there are ecosystems within the financial sector that need to be developed. And I'm talking about equity, financing possibilities, angel investments, venture capital funds, co-investment funds, co-investment grants, and a plethora of other things that need to be in place. But you also have to help the businesses, because in many instances, like in Carlos's instance, in Johanna's instance, what they are, these guys are entrepreneurs and they are scientists. They are technical persons. They come with an idea. There is a solution. They have been able to test and to perfect that solution to the problem facing them. And they want to monetize that. They want to then go to the market to sell that solution. They have the idea. They may not have the experience with managing a business. They may not have the experience with selling. They may not have the experience with actually going there and keeping the market, even if the market is given to them. And so you have to have persons that are able to bring those things together, as was done, for instance, in Korea with the Korean Development Bank, what they call literally hand-holding, where you take an idea, you match it with finance, you match it with engineering, you match it with management, you match it with capital, and you get it moving. So that is one of the things that is required. And then the final thing that is required is related to the two. And it's a change in our mindset, a change in our view. We keep on looking at things incrementally. We keep on believing that if we tweak a few things and we get the commercial banks or the development bank to have $100,000 fund, and we call it an entrepreneurship fund, that is going to solve the problems. No, there has to be a mindset change. That new approach to development, where we focus on our strongest attributes, which is our youth, the knowledge, the vibrancy, the innovation, the entrepreneurship that the youth are displaying. These are the things that we need to tap into. And we cannot do it piecemeal. It has to be the mainstreamed approach to development. We have to mainstream that whole issue of climate adaptation, and in some instances, climate mitigation, which is not something small countries are very much into, but our adaptation plans are our development plans. There is not a bifurcation where you can do traditional development and then do adaptation. The two things do not merge. Adaptation is not just about the physical environment, but it's about the way we do business. It's about building resilience in the physical environment, in the business environment, and not just building resilience, but being innovative coming up with new instruments that can be monetized, that can be sold. Very much like what those two young gentlemen have done with their solutions to the sargassum seaweed and to, water reticulation and providing, solutions to some of our challenges. There are also opportunities in finance, in insurance, in new products, in going back to our biodiversity and using our rich biodiversity to develop products that are more resilient to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I think based on the comments, we can all feel your passion. This is certainly an economist who has really adopted the triple bottom approach, and he has really embraced the need for inclusion and ensuring that environmental integrity and the other social aspects are incorporated. So now we're going to move from an economist to someone who has really walked the talk, somebody who has started a very unique journey. We know that within islands, we do not really have a culture and we don't have the infrastructure, sometimes the institutions to support research and development. But we do have innovation happening. And at this point, I would like to turn our attention to Mr. Callis Noel, and we will just play a short video to introduce some of his work. But just to let you know that Callis really co-established a lab where he can innovate and create rapid prototypes of his inventions. And he's currently exploring the possibility of establishing an after-school program where young children can come, explore, experiment, and innovate new ideas dubbed Kids in Science. He has also been presented with some awards in his homeland, St. Lucia. And so we'll just have a short introduction to him by means of a video, and then we will have a conversation.
Of an innovator and inventor whose inventions go far beyond the shores of this quaint and proud community. But who exactly is this inspiring young inventor?
Okay, my name is Callis Noel. I'm a fisherman by profession. Well, I started fishing early in my life. Branched out into systems engineering, a lot of electrical work, electronics. I tried other fields, but they did not really drive me, so I dropped out. So I stuck with systems engineering, electricals, and electronics.
Callis recalled being drawn to this field from a very early age. His father was a power station operator, and on weekends and off days, he remembers enjoying playing with old transformers, his father's tools, and reading his father's physics books. We asked him about his most treasured inventions to date.
The first project that really impacted me was the project that went to Nauru. I mean, I did the one in the library, but actually going out of St. Lucia, not even regional, going international, it was a lot to me. It meant a lot that I could actually do something that could help a nation.
To turn his love for invention into a business, Callis has partnered with PR and brand manager Laura Japierre, also from Library, to form the company called Invictus Inc. Invictus creates solutions for alternative energy and innovation. Jean-Pierre serves as the operations manager for Invictus.
What we try to do at Invictus is to create local solutions for global challenges. So of course, the world would be our market, our marketplace. I try as much as possible to get Callis out there in the public domain, get him interviewed by various media houses, get his name out there, get his product out there. And through that we get people who are now interested and they take to the bait and they call us.
Jean-Pierre and Noel have also recognized the important role of innovation to a country's level of competitiveness and productivity.
I mean, innovation is a driving force behind society. I mean, if it wasn't for innovation, we would still be riding horses, probably still have candles in our homes, probably more fatalities. So it's really, really important for survival of humanity.
Any government, any people, any nation who downplays innovation, they're wasting their time and they're on a slippery slope to nowhere, because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about.
Callis encourages young inventors and innovators to have a strong belief in themselves.
One thing that we really fall short of is we think everything is easy. You know, easy is never an option. If it's difficult, trust me, it must be worth it. Keep pushing and just believe in yourself.
The National Competitiveness and Productivity Council salutes the work of this young innovator and his company Invictus Inc. from the community of Labrie.
I'm innovative.
And thank you, Callis. And he's joined by Laura Japierre. Welcome to both of you. We would just like to start off by asking Callis, how has the journey towards becoming a green technopreneur been for you?
Well, like I was mentioned, it's not easy. You know, you face a lot of challenges, especially when you don't have like the formal schooling. Most people mistake not going to a classroom with, well, I actually have an education. I was self-taught at home. I did all my courses at my home. But starting off not having like the official certificates, because I read a lot of books, it's a challenge facing, you know, engineers and scientists and seasoned people. It has to do a lot with self-confidence, knowing that you know what you're talking about and you know the end game. So you just stick to that. It has a lot to do with self-confidence, but it wasn't easy.
Thank you. Thank you. Makia spoke about some of the support that is needed to really create a conducive environment for young entrepreneurs like yourself. He spoke about the financing. He spoke about the need for bringing the different players together. The question to you now is, who has really supported you along that journey? And, you know, who do you see as the main people who can support any young entrepreneur coming up within an island setting where we don't have so many research institutions, for example, and there's not a direct link between academia and industry?
Well, in my case, starting off with the first project, it was the Global Environmental Facility that really financed the project. But like what I experienced was they also limited. There's a limitation to what they could finance and how far you could go with the innovation. Well, one of the most important things in my family was really behind me. You know, that helped. Financing is a big issue, especially when you have when you need to develop a proof of concept. It will take a lot. It will take a lot from an organization if that is not the main focal area to put money into a proof of concept. That is one of my main challenges.
Okay, thank you. And we've been hearing quite a bit about the actual technology, the actual piece of technology that has been invented, but we now get a chance to see what it really looks like. So we also have another video which showcases a bit of that. And when we come back, we will speak about how you have been able to take this product and to commercialize it to the point where you are now exporting it or on your way to commercializing it.
It's a totally off-grid solar-powered mobile desalination system. It's powered by the sun, so that means zero carbon footprint, it's cheap to run, it's free power. It's unique in a sense that we do not discharge the harmful brine into the ocean. The system is also fully mobile, so in case of an approaching storm, we could always take it to a safe area. It came about because of the increasing drought over the years, and as a Laborian, we always faced with a water problem. When it rains, we have no water. During the dry season, we have no water also.
One of the qualities of this whole issue that always intrigues me is that, one of the challenges that islands are faced with, which always intrigues me, is the issue of size. But I think UCALIS has been able to really address this challenge, because oftentimes we know that technology is available, but because of the size that we want on islands, the companies, the distributors who can provide that technology are often not able to meet our needs. What I would like to know from you is just give us a little bit about how you were inspired to really address this issue where you bring in water and energy, and share with us how you were able to take this from a small island in the Caribbean, St. Lucia, and we understand that you've been able to share this technology with other islanders across the globe, and how you were able to really facilitate that technology transfer from island to island, so to speak.
Okay, well, necessity is the mother of all inventions. Unfortunately, my community library, we face a lot of, we face a serious water problem. Ironically, when it rains, we have no water. When there's a drought, we have no water. And the term water everywhere and not a drop to drink is not only for when you're in the middle of the ocean. Because when it rains, there's water all around us, but most of those waters are contaminated from the river. And that kind of drove me to find a solution for the problem. Well, it had two parts. To get the financing to build a desalinator and a water purification system, I had to find a solution for the brine problem, which is the effluent from the desalinator. It's about 3 times the salinity of the water that goes in from the sea that runs through a system. So that was one of my challenges, to find a solution for that. But basically, my community has a serious water problem, and looking at the news globally, a lot of places face water issues. And it doesn't take rocket science. I always say it doesn't take rocket science to find solutions. The simplest solutions can save lives. So that's how I came up with that.
And we understand that you are now partnering with NARU. Can you share something on that?
Yeah, they found out about the project through Jeff, the Global Environmental Facility. They found out about it and then they contacted me. Actually, the island has a serious water problem because the seawater is seeping into the water table, and it's actually seawater being pumped inland. So if you drill a well in Nauru, what you get is seawater or brackish water in certain areas. And it's not only in Nauru. We did a survey, Laura and myself did a survey on our rivers. And what we found out is the rising sea level, the farmers are actually facing a serious problem right now with irrigation in St. Lucia. There's a problem in Beaufort, Black Bay. There's a serious problem in Roseau. The water is almost the same salinity as the sea, like say probably about half a mile in, and it's getting worse. It's seeping further and further inland. So we are facing problems also.
Thank you so much, Callis. And now we move over to another young entrepreneur. He really, to my mind, embodies the concept of turning lemons into lemonade, or turning problems into opportunities. And that is the person of Johannan Dujon. Johannan really has taken on the whole issue of the sargassum problem. I think we are also having some discussion on this virtual summit concerning the sargassum. It has really plagued the Caribbean over the past couple of years. And we are now looking for solutions to address this problem. But Johannan has been able to really take this, and he, under his stewardship, his company, All Gas Organics, has processed over 1 million pounds of sargassum seaweed into fertilizer for export regionally and internationally. For his work, Johannan has received several awards, including the Commonwealth Youth Award for Excellence. He's been recognized by Forbes 2019, and of course the OECS Top 30 Entrepreneur Under 30 in 2017. I'd like to introduce Johannan and invite him to share some of his experiences as a young green technopreneur making his mark on the world stage.
Hi, good day, everybody. Thank you, Judith. Yeah, as Carlisle would have mentioned, you see issues as an entrepreneur, and what you are driven to do is to come out and to create a solution. And it is, of course, a lot more challenging in the Caribbean region than, let's say, Silicon Valley, because again, the infrastructure just doesn't exist. And I'm not sure there's a reason why. I just don't think there's a willingness necessarily to do what it takes, I would say, to support innovation within the region. But, entrepreneurs, that's the beauty of it. Entrepreneurship is about, going through all of the challenges and coming out victorious on the other end. So to that end, it has been a beautiful journey, exciting. We can't wait to process all of these sargassum arriving in the Caribbean, which is the end goal here. But what I will say is that I am not worried about myself anymore at this point. I am concerned about the upcoming generations, because I have been and I think Carlisle as well, have been very fortunate. We've been very fortunate. I was also supported by the GEF program, the Global Environment Facility, and a number of other agencies. So we are the lucky ones. We had the familial support. We had the grit and the determination to succeed and the works. There are people who are, young people who are 10 times more intelligent than myself and Carlisle combined, who may not have the familial support, who may not have the wherewithal to bring their innovations to the fore. And the amalgamation of the cumulative successes of startups is what is going to drive an economy. In the region, we've seen that the public sector normally is the largest creator of jobs, as Mr. Andrew would have mentioned, and that is just not sustainable. But we've seen, I think by now, that there's just not a willingness to deviate from that. And the region is on a very slippery slope, I think, as the young lady in Carlisle's video would have mentioned, because continued inaction will just lead to one, climate change making a mess, in the region, and two, just economic collapse. I mean, sargassum is threatening one of the region's most serious, or the region's largest earner of income, which is tourism. And even then, the approach has been somewhat lethargic to actually solve the issue. And that's the beauty of the private sector, though, because regardless of however, persons are approaching the issue, the private sector has the agility and the wherewithal to bring solutions to the fore. So in conclusion, it has been a marvelous journey. I wouldn't have it any other way, but I think that it is for future generations and for persons coming up behind us, I think it is unnecessarily difficult for an entrepreneur to get started in the region. And I think that there's just not a willingness to do what it takes to help the ones coming behind us. We can point to Carlisle and myself as success stories, but 2 success stories will not change an entire region, regardless of how successful we become. There needs to be cumulative efforts being made to make sure that you have an ecosystem, right?
Thank you so much, Johanna. And we can fully sense your passion and the passion of all the other panelists. We see a number of questions coming in, a number of comments coming in, and we want to encourage you to continue to provide some feedback. But Johanna, you made a very important point. You underscored the need for us to invest in the next generation, so to speak. And you, even in your short span as an entrepreneur, you have already matured to the point where you feel that you need to invest in coming generations. Can you share with us what, to your mind, is the most important lesson that you have learned? We've already spoken about that really formal education may not be as important as we think, although you need education, you need to educate yourself. But many young persons believe that this is the only route to achieving success. But given your experience, given what you know now, what would you say to a young person is the most important lesson that you have learned so far in making it through?
Right. To be honest, I would say find a solution. If you want job, the old paradigm of job security, go to school, get a good job. We know that this doesn't work any longer. It's not rocket science. We know that. We can see it happening. Youth unemployment is pretty high, even amongst educated youth. So it's really a matter of the best form of job security, I would think, or I would say from my experience, is to solve an issue. Find an issue in your community, in your country, in your region that you are passionate about and solve it. And that doesn't apply to everyone, but I think if we're looking for, a solution that can pull the region out of the rut that it's in, that's one. Encourage persons to find solutions to the issues that confront them, because the present trajectory is you graduate from secondary school, you want to go to community college, and then you rush off to university. But in reality, if we're very frank, for most people, that is only deferring unemployment, as harsh as that sounds. You have persons undertaking that and still deferring unemployment because they do that coming back into a country or countries that do not have jobs available for them, right? And so it's like lambs to the slaughter. So yeah, find solutions. The other thing is really that I've learned is that when you travel a lot, you see a lot of models that work. I think that it's exactly what Carlisle said. Another lesson is, countries that do well systematically make efforts to support innovation. So in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, no wonder they're one of the largest exporters in the region. They offer grants. So you have a proof of concept, like Carlisle wants to create, let's say, a prototype, or Algas wants to create it. They will provide, they may not have all of the infrastructure, but they would make available grants that will allow for proof of concept. And once the proof of concept is established, then you can look at equity investment, etc., which is also underdeveloped because that's for another show. But that's what I would say in a nutshell.
Thank you, Johanna. And I think this creates a nice introduction to our next speaker, Dr. Gary Jackson. Dr. Jackson, you have been patiently waiting. I'm sure you're quite excited and you have quite a bit to share with us. Given your experience, you have worked in a number of different capacities. You're a strong believer in renewable energy and also in empowering our youth. Given the thoughts that have already been shared, can you please just highlight for us, what do you see that institutions like the one that you are currently at and the other institutions in the region with a similar mandate can do to really facilitate the growth and development of green technopreneurship in the region and in general on islands?
Thank you very much, Judith. First, I must say I'm inspired by hearing those two young men. It gives me a new lease on life. So thank you very much for that, gentlemen. It tells me that there's still hope. And it also tells me that the world is your oyster. So keep pushing and keep pulling. And remember, pay forward. All right, so some important points were raised here today, and I just want to highlight them. Talking about human resources and our physical environment being assets, looking at the leadership and how we can transition into a more viable businesses and viable countries, looking at our survival and what it means to us, looking at how we are linking academia to industry, and also our willingness to encourage innovation. So one of the things I can understand is innovation is very broad and it's very important. Entrepreneurship is for everyone, but not everyone will become entrepreneurs. And we have to encourage everybody, not only entrepreneurs, but everybody who is in the working environment and who has not yet entered the working environment, that education, being it informal or formal, is an important part of our development requirements. It is going to be a critical component for us to drive economic growth. And we have to make sure that we are relating to each other and communicating with each other and sharing our ideas so that we can continue to keep the young people encouraged and informed and engaged. As we go through, our resilience and our issues, I mean, I heard one speaker speaking about the rising sea levels, brackish water getting into farmlands. And as we speak about what has happened with Karen, flooding in Trinidad, and as we talk about Bahamas with Dorian, and we look at the droughts, we look at the whole climate action, the climate issues that we are having, we realize that innovation is going to be a more critical component in driving the agenda for renewable energy and energy efficiency. It is now our survival, and we have to figure out a way of how we are actually going to do this. And I must say, I'm apologizing to all the young people. We have really created a lot of grief for you. We have done a lot of damage, but I am one of them who are now going to work to create an enabling environment for you so that you can fix what we have left for you. So one of the things that I can say, the organization that I represent, the Caribbean Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, the Center, is looking at developing a project preparation facility that will help entrepreneurs build their business case to provide solutions, well, with their solutions to provide a mechanism or a business plan that will put them into the business arena so that they can have a way to succeed. One thing that we understand is that there's a supply and demand that you will have to understand. So you have to understand that there's a demand for whatever you're trying to put into the market. So if you're solving a problem, make sure that there's a need for that solution. And don't be afraid to encourage your leaders in your various countries to drive this transformation. Take it to them. Don't be shy, be bold, be firm, and be respectful. Understand that we're all in this together. It is not about the adults taking charge and you are just waiting behind. It's about you also taking charge in the sense that you want to encourage them to give you the enabling environment and become more willing to encourage innovation to drive the transformation that is required for our survival. We are encouraging to have internships. We are planning to have internships, I should say, within the decree, obviously on a selection basis, that will encourage persons to operate within the space and learn more. That will provide an avenue for influencing or I would say encouraging more entrepreneurs to be in the green space. We realize that there are a lot of things that are happening in the region, and we want to find a way to, as I said before, give that enabling environment so that you can actually have an avenue to have your technologies be presented to the rest of the Caribbean and to the rest of the world, because the world is your oyster.
Thank you very much, Gary. Gary, just a follow-up question. In a previous life, so to speak, you would have undertaken a bit of work on behalf of the OECS Commission, where you examined factors and policy recommendations for MSMEs, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And I think when we look at the island context, this is essentially what our businesses on islands are. You looked at it in terms of the uptake of renewables to help make businesses more competitive, more sustainable, etc. But I think in undertaking your work, you would have gathered quite a bit of information and a better appreciation of how the businesses, at least in our part of the world, function. Can you just share with us, based on that piece of work, what do you see as critical factors for the sustainability of businesses? Because it is one thing to have a green product and a successful or attractive product, but it is also another thing when it comes to the actual business operations to ensure that this product delivers well in terms of quality, but that the business which is delivering that service or that product is able to sustain itself and continue to grow and expand and provide jobs and revenues for the future.
Thank you, Judith. So one of the things that we picked up in that study is that persons who are developing business or having small businesses to just make ends meet. There was no desire to grow the business. One of the other things that we picked up is that they were not recording how the business is actually operating. You know, they're not recording bills, they're not recording what kind of revenues they have made. They are not making any proper book entries to kind of see how they perform this month versus last month. And then the other aspect is barriers to entry. There was a number of participants in our survey who indicated that it was cost prohibitive to go the renewable energy or energy efficiency route, and that some of these interventions would have taken place on buildings that they are renting, and they didn't see a need to increase the value of a rented building for their businesses without having some equity share with the landlord. So some of these, what we have realized is about public education and public awareness, and for them to understand how businesses work and what will be important for them as part of what you have mentioned, economic growth, and for improved revenue, and for that to be a part of the capital that will help a country to grow when more of its small and medium businesses grow. It gives, as our first speaker spoke about, that is what governments will depend on for the growth to happen when you have more tax, a better tax net to improve social services, better services for the hospitals, better services for security forces, is that we have a community that, or a country that actually has small and medium enterprises that can grow in that way. So those are some of the things that we picked up, and I think a lot of it is how we educate our small and medium enterprises to operate as a business with a growth agenda.
Thank you, Gary. And I think you hinted at some of the recommendations coming from Mikhail, and I think this is a good way for us to transition back to Mikhail. Mikhail, in your sharing, you indicated that there are some areas where we can have some quick wins, so to speak. The CDB recently published a report where they looked at the green economy in the Caribbean sense, and renewable energy was highlighted as one of the most promising areas, so to speak. We look at areas when we speak about islands such as tourism, agro-processing. These have all been traditionally recognized as being areas where there's quite a bit of scope for green technopreneurship, and we really haven't explored the full potential of those sectors. But, you know, we are traditionally as human beings, we tend to like our comfort zone, and change can sometimes be something that is not easy for well-established businesses. What, to your mind, would be some of the key drivers to encourage this paradigm shift that you spoke about for some of those operators, some of those businesses that have already been accustomed to their business as usual, but would really be able to really reap some good rewards from making that transition? How can we engage them? How can we reach them?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me start by saying
V.S. Naipaul, one of our two Nobel literature laureates in the Caribbean, had a book called The Mimic Men, and my interpretation of it is that in the Caribbean, we are generally opinion-led. We tend to follow trends, good or bad, and so that is a fertile platform for leading by example. Success begets its own success, and I think one of the things that certainly I'm looking forward to seeing in my lifetime is many more persons following in the footsteps of the green techno-entrepreneurs that we see, like Carlos and Joanna and others throughout the region, because the demonstration effect of success is very powerful. So that's one of the things. But as I said before, one of the things that is required to get those things to happen is that ecosystem. Someone asked a question about accelerators and incubators, and of course, both incubators and accelerators are part of the ecosystem of business development, particularly for startups. It is critical, but I have always had a funny feeling about public sector officials who have not worked a day in the private sector, literally operating and running those incubators and accelerators. And I asked, who makes those decisions? Who sits around the table and decide that a government agency is going to provide the business services through an incubator or accelerator that businesses? You can do some things. There's some administrative things that you can do. But I think mentorship is one of the most critical issues, and that's where you get it with angel investors. I also believe that we need, because we are small and we have limited resources, we need to ride the product cycle, the innovation product cycle a little more, because we are not going to be very successful if we just do original research and try to spend all our time and resources on the original research to get solutions. Carlos has done it, Johanna has done it, but I'm almost certain that in doing it, they relied on many other precedents that were set elsewhere. Okay, there are certain learning curves that you climb. So one of the things I believe that also needs to happen is we must have a common research facility, and not just research for academic research, but research to turn great ideas into business. I believe the University of the West Indies, who works with us, both in the Green Economy Action Learning Group, and is also very much a part of the angel investment development environment. Just this week, there was an angel investment facility opened by the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, together with the UNDP. And a green economy, not angel investing, sorry. And I believe that this is where we need to have horses for courses. Not everyone can do the same thing. Agencies like the OECS provide the learning. You are the thought leaders. The CDB provides the policy guideline as well as the capital. But we need the universities of the West Indies to not just look at academia, but also to embrace young talent and to provide them with the forum and the facilities for having applied research that can be taken to the market. I think as a small region, that is one of the things we need to focus on. And finally, I would say one of the things that we also need to look at, someone talked about tourism. And there's a very simple thing with tourism. And it may sound funny to some, but the amazing thing about tourism is that I did some research about a decade ago, 12 years ago, at the Caribbean Tourism Organization. And we tried to find out what was an eco-tourist. And amazingly, the quintessential eco-tourist is someone who is at the highest end of the tourism or the tourist spectrum. That is a person that has about 20 business trips a year, a high net worth individual who, when they go on holiday, they want that same exquisite standards, but authentic and unique. And they're also ethnocentric in the sense that they want to experience the culture of the destination that they go to. So it presents an opportunity for us because tourism expands a small country's market size on a daily basis. In the Bahamas, they get 5.5 times the population in visitors every year. In St. Lucia, we get about 2.2 times our population in stay over visitors. If you add cruise visitors to that, it is about 6 times our population. So there are opportunities for us to develop what I call green products and services that can be sold in a plausible way to that expanded market. And with tourism, the fact of the matter is that you are exporting within your borders. So tourism also creates an opportunity for trade because it gives you the first element. And the best example of that is Jamaica. Jamaica's greatest export is cultural products. And that was developed through its tourism, where people came to the Reggae Sumfest and Reggae Sunsplash, experienced Jamaican culture. And now Japan is the largest reggae market in the world, larger than even Jamaica. And so there are opportunities. We don't have time to go into detail with all of them, but I think the notion that we must have is we must find solutions based on our strongest attributes without compromising our identity, our culture, our history, our legacy, but let us do it in a plausible way that is saleable rather than rely on other people to give us a helping hand.
Thank you so much, Mikhail. I've been looking at the questions coming in and the chat comments, and we have some very interesting ones. And there was one pertaining to startups. So I'd like to ask you, Kalis, your business is still growing. You've been able to do something phenomenal, I think, in getting your product across to another part of the world to solve a problem there. But what do you see as being one of the, or perhaps it may not be only be one, but what are the key support systems that can be put in place in terms of creating an enabling environment for startups such as yourselves? Because it takes a period of time for us to have a product, be able to put it on the market, and for that business to really be able to reap revenues on a annual basis.
Okay, I think I'm going to let Laura address that question. Just switch over.
She is your marketing person. I can well understand that.
Good afternoon, everyone. One of the things that Kalis and I have realized that's so very important for us in starting up our business, it's a good one thing when you have an idea and you know the technical know-how of it, but it's another thing to have the business acumen. And one of the things in my experience that I've found out is that persons with technical experience or technical know-how, they don't typically have the business acumen to follow. It's a running joke. It's a running joke between Kalis and myself. I constantly have to tell him, how many man hours have you put into this project? You're costing us money. We're supposed to be making money. So I think that's very important to have that kind of support network. For me, it was very easy because both Kalis and myself are very family-centric. And for myself, I grew up in a family that has a business. We grew up from the time I could count, being at the till and counting monies and making business decisions, small ones, but making business decisions nonetheless. Your parents always said to you, well, our parents always said to us, you need to know how to count your money, you need to know how to make those decisions. So surrounding yourself with people who are aligned with your goals is very important. We have been able, from early o'clock, I said to Kalis, you know what, you can no longer work from a workshop in a 2x4 and expect to spew out the kind of productivity that you need. You need to expand. It's going to be a little costly in the beginning. We don't have the kind of monies. I mean, we had some savings, but as you can expect with a startup where you have no real support, financial or otherwise, when you're going into a bank, as Mikhail said earlier, they're not going to look at you. You have no business backup, as you know, as we say in our local parlance. So you have to work with what you have, and you have to be That's where the real innovation comes in. So whilst he's building prototypes and he's building and he's coming up with all those sorts of ideas and solutions for real world problems and challenges, the real innovation is how to translate the little resources that you have into something that benefits you and your product. So what we did is we used our own financial resources. For us, that worked, but it only took us so far. And then I approached my family. I remember having a meeting with Mikhail. We really did not know that was what we were doing, but we had a meeting with Mikhail once, and he was saying that's where the friends, family, and fools come in, or something like that, where you can't really get the funding and the financing that you need, but you can get it other ways. So I went to my family, and we were able to get real estate, and we were able to set up a lab where we actually do all of the innovation and the testing and the prototyping. We set up an office. I mean, I used to work out of, I run a bed and breakfast, and so I used to work out of that. So constantly, every time I get guests, I'm chased out of my office pretty much. So we set up an office for that, so we could have persons coming to talk to us. We could invite persons across to talk about our ideas and to pitch our ideas and that kind of thing. And we're just taking it from there. Carlos mentioned earlier that his education did not stop in the classroom, because as we all know, he dropped out of school, but his education continued. And it's very important for young people to understand education is not just chalk and talk. You don't have to necessarily go into a classroom setting to be successful education-wise. You can educate yourself otherwise. Carlos is homeschooled. So he did a lot of his courses at home, online, because that worked best for him. He could move at his own speed. His brain works differently. So you have to understand your limitations, your challenges, as well as what your strengths are, and work on that to translate that or to parlay that into success. So that was the pillars that we used for our startup. We knew what we wanted to do. Both of us were very much interested in environment issues, climate change adaptation, and that kind of thing. So we used that as an idea, as a niche for us to start our business. And we just used the resources that were available, and we were creative in what the resources were. We started off by saying we have no money, but we had a lot of resources. When we put it on paper, we had a lot of resources. We had real estate, we had family, which is a big thing. Between the two of us, we had our education, him technically and me formally, because I was too deathly afraid of dropping from school to actually go Carlos's route. So I went through the formal education system, and I think I did pretty well for myself. So we were able to parlay that, and throughout my career in business, we were able to piggyback those two things and to start there.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think you've really underscored the importance of partnerships and networking and division of labor. Because I mean, as small islanders, we know, we have to multitask. You have to be multi-skilled, but at some point you have to be able to identify where your forte is and to use your specialized skills for the good of any business that you are starting off. Mikhail, going back to this whole issue of business planning, so one comment that gathered some interest in the group was the whole issue of whether business plans are now archaic and whether we should move into business modeling. We have seen different responses to that comment, but I would just like to hear your feedback on this.
Yeah, it's horses for courses, really. At the startup stage of a business, of course, you need to model the business. You need to show how the business will move from just the idea stage to developing up to the stage of exit. And that is one of the very critical things for small businesses in the region. I've found they don't have an exit strategy. Angel investors, I would say 80% to 90% of the time, only get a return, a real return on investment upon exit, whether it's through an IPO or through a buyout or an acquisition or some other exit strategy. That is how you're going to get a return. And so you have to have it as part of your business model, that exit. You can't own the business forever as an individual. It's not going to be successful by definition. But business plans that project where a business will be in 5 years' time, or in some instances in 3 years' time, it's really a lot of guesswork. Yes, there's a lot of research that goes into it, market research, market analysis, and so on. And that is fine. If you go in and you're an established business and you go in for some level of debt financing, the banks would need to know that. They would need to know that there is a plausible opportunity for you to repay the loan. But for a startup, I think the business modeling and you know, an idea of where the business goes would be more important. Of course, angel investors want to look at your finances, but more important than that, they want to know that the actual business idea can be plausibly developed from a market point of view, from a sales point of view, from a technological point of view, and in some instances from a real property, intellectual property point of view, because these are the critical assets that they're looking at. And so you have to have a sense of how you present those things as part of your business model. But the business plan itself, I would submit, would be for a much later stage in the development, not at startup.
Thank you, Mikhail. And Johannan, the colleagues have shared the importance of business planning, business modeling. They've spoken about navigating between marketing, the amount of time you spend in a business, ensuring that you have the right partnerships. I think you've done quite a good job at representing yourself, and you've been able to successfully reach other markets. Can you just share with us, given that I don't anticipate that you have huge resources in terms of manpower, how you've been able to do so? If you're speaking, Johannan, you may be muted.
Judith, seems like Johannan's dropped off the call, so he's not.
Okay, so since Johannan has dropped off the call, the question now goes back to Mikhail. Mikhail, we have been speaking about this green technopreneurship, the green economy, green growth. We have highlighted the opportunities, and you did so very successfully in terms of how we bring together economy, social aspects, and the environmental aspects. We're moving towards a new type of economic development. How do we know when we have arrived?
I wish I had an answer, Judith. I don't know that we arrive, you know? I think it's a process. And like anything else, it evolves. It evolves over time. There are different challenges. But I think the most important thing is for us to have a very lucid strategy, an actionable strategy of where we want to be, whether in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. It starts today. It cannot happen on its own. So it's not a question of arriving. It's a question of putting in the work and taking the necessary actionable steps towards implementing that strategy. So the arrival is not the issue, because it's a journey, it's a process. That journey keeps on going, but we have to start today to embrace the change that we want to be, to embrace the prosperity that we want to see, to embrace the sustainability that we want to see, and to embrace the entrepreneurial development, the job creation, the wealth creation that all of us want to see.
Thanks, Mikhail. Callis and Laura, the question to you. What next? You've made some very good strides, but I'm sure that you have a vision for your company. You have a vision of where you want to go. Are there any plans in terms of expansion into new areas, or are you going to continue on this exciting area of water and energy? And in terms of collaboration, are there any new plans in terms of collaborating with the Pacific?
Well, for me, what I really want to see happen is our technology being utilized more in the Caribbean, like regionally. Because looking at the trends in climate and the trends in the hurricane season, and unfortunately, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and we need to be prepared for that. And we're also working on a new desalinator called the Nomad, LifeCube Nomad. It's specifically designed for post-disaster. It's more rugged, it can be transported on any form of transportation. It has multiple power sources, wind, line voltage, or solar. But for me, I really want to see our technology being used more in the Caribbean.
One of the things I wanted to stress on what Carlos just said, he said he wanted to see our technology being used more in the Caribbean regionally and further afield, but he never mentioned St. Lucia. And I think one of the stumbling blocks for young entrepreneurs and innovators is something my dad always says: you're never a king in your own country. You know, we don't have one working desalinator in St. Lucia except the one that we have in our lab, the one that we're using for our community, and that is owned by us. Not one has been commissioned for St. Lucia, and that is very disturbing because all of our technocrats and all of our legislators always comment when they hear about us or they talk to us is that it needs to be commissioned in every community or every constituency in St. Lucia because we are in dire straits where water is concerned. But it's just more talk and nothing is being done about it. As a matter of fact, with the recent catastrophe of Dorian in the Bahamas, we have been engaged by so many different agencies in St. Lucia from the Bahamas with regard to commissioning the units in the Bahamas and even in St. Lucia, but nothing has been done about it. And I think that is one of the major downfalls, is that if we cannot invest in innovation, and this is supposed to be the decade of innovation and research in St. Lucia, if we cannot invest in that kind of in a real tangible way, and we're not just talking about, I mean, Joanne talked about, no, I don't think it was Joanne, Carlos and I, when we were discussing earlier, we talked about grants that nations give to their innovators and the young people to get your, actually I do think it was Joanna who spoke about it, and that sparked interest or conversation, where you can get your proof of concept on the road and roll that out and that kind of thing. I think that's a very plausible way to go because it really helps you to cut down on the cost of innovation. Innovating is so expensive. There were times when Carlos and I really did not even know if we were going to get air to eat because it is so expensive, such an expensive venture, and everybody wants it for nothing. Everybody wants it for free, but they don't understand that there's a cost to it. So it's very important that we put our support and our investment where our talk is, because at the end of the day, once we do it on our own, it's all about the money thereafter because you have to recoup your losses. Also, we have a few other projects that we are working on. We can't go into detail right now, but it is all about climate change adaptation. It's not just about water, it's about sustainable livelihoods and a sustainable food for our country and for our region.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think we've had some very good discussion this afternoon. And I think, like I said, this is really just the beginning of a conversation. I know that we are fast approaching our closing. I just want to open up. Mikhail, if you're still with us, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to make at this point? Oh. Okay,
I'm there, Julie. I was just telling you, we're not fast approaching. We actually passed our time, so I sent you a note. But my closing remarks would be very simple. Let's be green. Let's be innovative. Let us be true, and let us be as entrepreneurial as we can be, even if we're in the public sector.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. We do have just a couple of minutes left, but we thank you so much for your contribution, and we really do appreciate your experience coming through. Kalis, any closing remarks from you?
Well, just basically, if we have any innovators or innovator wannabes or anybody who has ideas, don't be afraid, to go for it. Don't be afraid to go for it. Just
never an option.
Yep.
And in terms of networking, I don't know if you, we had a number of questions. People were wondering where you're based. Perhaps you can take this opportunity just to share. So how they can contact you, maybe an email address.
So we are in our bases in Labrie. We're very patriotic that way. If you know Labrie people, we like to keep it close to home. So we are based in Labrie.
Labrie in St. Lucia.
Yes. So by extension, we are patriotic about our country. We have a website that we're working on. It's under construction. But if anybody wants to get in touch with us, they can send us emails at laurajapia@gmail.com. That's laurajapia@gmail.com or at collisnoel7@gmail.com. And they can contact us by cell phone, 284-6536, 284-6536, or 488-1213. When they contact us, we'll be able to direct them to our website. It's under construction right now, so we try not to divert too much traffic to it, but by the end of the week, we should be on stream.
Kalis 7 without the E.
Yeah, it's KARLIS.
Thank you so much. And participants, attendees, panelists, we want to thank you so much for joining us. This has been for me a very inspiring and intellectually stimulating conversation. I want to thank James and his team and the team from the OECS for putting this on. I think we have learned quite a bit, and it has really opened opportunity for us to continue networking amongst islanders and persons who have an interest in Ireland. Like I indicated, the challenges that island people face are unique, and we need to find unique solutions. As Laura said, it's really about innovation, adapting the technologies, coming up with technologies that are suited to our own problems. Sometimes the solutions are out there, but they can be expensive. Sometimes it requires that we build a bridge between the solutions and our problems. It means that we have to marry our indigenous technologies, our indigenous knowledge with modern ways of doing things. We still need to be consistent and persistent, and we have to be able to do the necessary networking to ensure that when we have a solution, that it is not kept a secret. I think the whole essence of this virtual summit is really to provide solutions to persons across the globe who normally wouldn't have the opportunity to experience this or to get to know each other. So I would encourage us to continue to use the app and the facilities presented by this virtual summit. I think James will be making the presentations available and some of the conversation available. We at the OECS Commission, we really see this as a unique opportunity. We are quite happy to have been part of this. We have a number of teams that have worked on this. We know that our business development unit has been part of this. The environmental cluster has been part of this. And we see this really as the beginning of a new journey for a virtual community of green entrepreneurs. When I looked up the meaning of technopreneur this morning, because I kept on being asked, what exactly is a technopreneur? It really is a new breed of entrepreneurship, I was told, and it really involves a coming together of people who are intelligent, driven, creative, tech savvy, and passionate, and have an appetite for calculated risk. I think these are all qualities that islanders embody, and these are the qualities that will help us to really derive the solutions for the problems that we are being faced with. This really is an exercise that has to be done jointly in partnerships. I think we have had the opportunity for the attendees to share a number of resources and facilities. There's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to build on this and to ensure that the outcomes of this virtual summit lead to something even greater. So I want to encourage every young entrepreneur out there, every young green technopreneur to go out and do your part, be bold. I hope that we have been able to inspire you and to really reassure you that it can be done. The policymakers have to do their part. We are the OECS Commission. We will be putting in whatever measures we can do to support the policymakers within our member states to create this conducive environment. And we welcome your feedback and suggestions as to how we can facilitate this process. For the colleagues who have joined us from other parts in the world, who have had some success stories, we also welcome receiving some of that information, because we know that as an island, we have to work together. There's strength in unity, so we look forward to hearing the solutions from Asia, from the Pacific, from the European islands, from the American islands. I think as islands, we all recognize the ability that we have to come together to find creative and innovative solutions. We are looking forward to seeing the results from Johannan and from Calise and Laura in terms of the commercialization of their products. So please keep us updated on your success. I'm sure James will find a way to support that. And if there's anything that we can do to support you in making your message reach the crowd out there, we will certainly investigate what is possible and facilitate it if we are able to do so. So, like I said, continue to check the messages so that you can get a sense of who is out there, who has been part of this panel, continue the networking, and rest assured that next year we will find another opportunity to ensure that what we have started here today is built upon and that it can provide some good suggestions. I think we have 2 minutes left. Perhaps, Martin, we can just look at any questions, if there's any burning questions or comments. So just to read a few, it says, Sloan from Schuller says, you need group export strategies with multiple goods and distribution access on the other side. And she says government, she or he says government could sponsor this for a short time. Mikhail says exit strategies are needed and a plan is needed to work it. It doesn't mean it cannot change. The model for now has to make money, and where it is coming from is key. I think we have some very good suggestions. And I think that, like I said, that this is really the beginning of the conversation. Dr. Jackson has asked that we express his apologies because he had to take out. We encourage you to also check out the website of CCRI and to see what support that they can provide, especially when it comes to renewable energy technologies. Also check out the website of the OECS Commission. You will see the various areas that we have been supporting, and you will see what facilities and opportunities may be of interest to you to facilitate your journey being a little easier, your journey of entrepreneurship and, dare I say, green technopreneurship. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again, and we wish you well, and we look forward to more success coming from the islands in terms of science, technology, innovation, and all the good things that will lead to a successful business, a green economy, and a real prosperous island life for those of us who live on islands. Thank you very much and goodbye on behalf of the OECS Commission.